Welcome to today's Moments of Truth and part 4 of the truth about feelings. Now, if you go back and listen to parts 1, 2, and 3, what you will hear is a consistent theme that's telling us that God is not moved by our feelings. God's purpose, plan, and His will for our lives are not impacted by our feelings. And what I want to do today is I want to put a conclusion to the whole matter. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of a twist in this, because one of the things that we don't take into account is how our expectations impact our feelings. And so I'm going to use an example in this situation. It's probably an example that one wouldn't think about as it relates to talking about feelings and expectations. But I'm going to use Peter because this actually connects up directly with the message that I'm really trying to communicate today as it relates to our expectations and the impact that it has on our feelings. And Peter gets a bad rap oftentimes because he denied Jesus. But the reality is that all of the disciples denied Jesus. And the only reason why Peter got called out by Jesus is because Peter just happened to be the most outspoken of the disciples. And because he was outspoken, he unfortunately gets this reputation because of this situation with Jesus actually calling him out about denying him 3 times. Okay? But all of the disciples denied him, and Jesus even said that. So like I always tell you, if I can't show it to you in the scriptures, don't believe it. So let's go to the word, and then we're going to connect all of this together. So as I said, Matthew 26 tells us that, starting at verse 31, then Jesus said unto them, all ye shall be offended because of me this night, for it is written, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. Verse 32 says, but after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter answered and said unto him, though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended. Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee, that this night before the cock crow thou shalt deny me thrice. Now, this is where people don't read the scriptures accurately or effectively to get a good understanding, which is why I always say the Bible don't teach us to interpret the scriptures. It tells us to rightly divide it, which is to get understanding. So listen to what this says. Peter said unto him, though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples. Okay? Now, I want to pause right there, because the reason why I picked out Peter for this situation is because Peter said, though I should die with thee. Peter was actually prepared to die with Jesus, not for Jesus. Notice it didn't say, though I should die for thee. It says, though I should die with thee. Peter was fully prepared to die with Jesus. How do we know that? Because when Judas came with his crew to actually take Jesus up, what did Peter do? Peter pulled out his sword and he cut off the soldier's ear. So Peter was in full battle mode, to ready to fight and defend and protect Jesus. And if that meant that it would have cost him his life, Peter would have willingly lost his life fighting with Jesus had Jesus wanted to fight. But what happened is Jesus totally went against Peter's expectation. Peter's expectation was that Jesus, with all of his power, would actually defend himself and take up arms or take up the fight against those coming against him. And that's not what Jesus was about. And that wasn't what Peter's expectation was. So as a result of Peter's expectation of what he thought Jesus would do not being met, Peter then took course to go in a different direction. which is why he denied Jesus, because now he doesn't know how to handle this situation. His expectations were one way, and he was prepared to act according to his expectations. But when his expectations weren't met, he didn't know what to do. And that's what happens to a lot of us as Christians. Our expectations are a certain way. And we are expecting God to do things based on our expectations. And oftentimes, most of the time, that's not the way God does things. And it causes some of us, many of us, to actually do like Peter did. We start doing things that don't resemble us being Christians. Now, Peter did it verbally and physically. Most of us don't do it verbally. We don't literally physically deny Jesus in word like Peter did, but we deny him in our actions. We deny him in our attitudes. We deny him in our behaviors. And the people who are looking at us and saying, you're supposed to be a Christian. You're not acting like a Christian. You're not behaving like a Christian. You're not talking like a Christian. You're not demonstrating the attitude of a Christian. And in that regard, we do just like Peter did. We deny Jesus. Not because that was our intent, but because what we expected wasn't manifested, and it shook us. It took our confidence. It took our hope and caused us to do the very thing that most of us say we would never do. And that's the truth about feelings. See you next time on Moments of Truth.